Hi, welcome to another episode. Thanks as always for all of the comments and questions that you send in. Really helps me find new things to share with you and teaches me really interesting things when I'm trying to fix these problems. So Nithin, apologies if I'm getting the pronunciation wrong, has asked, how do you create many objects, similar properties, and how can we change each property of each object, I think is where we're going. So I'm going to try and make something fun to do that. I had a test run of this and it's been a few days. So let's see how this goes. So I've got a basic setup ready here. I've got my usual few things to set up, like scenes and renders and cameras and things. But really all we have is one simple box geometry. How can we make lots of box geometries, and how can we make it so that we can control each one? So the first thing we need to do is have more than one box. And how does that look, and how can we start to control it? So we could just make another box. We'll need to change the name, call it like mesh 2. You can get rid of this geometry. And that starts to be a big thing, and you can share geometry and materials. So it's the same thing in the same place. How can we control having these in different positions, control where they show up, how do they act differently, and things like that. Things being exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to make a new elements folder and make a thing. Because we're not just going to have boxes, we're going to get cones and toruses, and we're going to change colors and really try and make something interesting and kind of generative looking. So we're going to call these things things. So we need to import those. Copilot's so cool. So this thing, this elements. That's a new convention I'm going with, where the components are kind of ThreeJS things, like lifecycle things. The elements then are the actual pieces that I'm working with. But I still haven't spelled it right. Let's put the JS. Maybe Copilot isn't as good as I thought. How am I getting this so wrong? JS elements. Not JS. Maybe is it because there's nothing in there? There we go. Okay, so let's shift our meshes into that class. And as with previous lessons, when we're moving into class land, we tend to want to do some this dots. And wherever mesh is, this dots. Geometry material. And we're going to pass a sketch in when we're creating one, so let's just get one running and showing. So this dot thing equals new thing. I'm going to pass through our sketch. We're going to get some errors because things aren't set up nicely here. So this dot sketch, and all of these are going to be trying to be too clever. I'm in a tiny bit of a rush today, so that's maybe why I'm going a bit quicker. Sketch is not defined. Sketch, constructor, sketch. It's this rather than sketch. Free is not defined. Cool, we're almost there. So we just need to import everything as 3 from. Cool. So we're where we were, except now we have a class for our thing. And the question is, how can we control multiple things at the same time and treat them differently? So again, we're gonna just make this sketch available to the window so that we can get that nice experience of seeing them in the console. So we have the sketch. We go sketch.thing because we're saying this thing over here. And we have access to it. And in that thing, you can see the geometry, the material, the mesh. So we could say, it's important not to confuse the way we've got it going here. This material and this geometry become part of the thing, but they're not actually the geometry and the material. They're still on the mesh itself. There's the material. So we could say this thing dot mesh dot position dot x equals 2, and it moves over. So this is what we had before. This is how you control one thing and look at the whole sketch. But what if we want many things? So to do that, we could do an array of things. So we could say this dot things is an array, and we could just push our new thing to that array. So it's still there, but now if we try and look at this dot thing, it's undefined. But if we look at this dot things, it's an array with one item in it, which is that thing. Cool. So we're getting close. Now we want to have many of them. So how can we do that? Let's say I'm just going to have a random number here. I'm going to make 3. And I'm going to say, so I want to make a grid that you might have seen in the thumbnail of several things across, several things down. So the number is just going to be a count of how many things we're going to have. So let's say I don't want to do I want to do x because I want it to go across the x-axis. And I want another loop for us to go up and down on the y-axis. Let's close those loops. And now if I save this, it looks the same, but if we look at our things, we've got 9 things. So we've got a grid going on. Actually, I want to just do a little bit more to make the maths a little easier. So we should have 16 things. But they're all in the same place. So this is where we start to try and get that fine-grained control. So you could look at any one of these. Let's pick one at random. Let's say number 7, this particular thing. And we could say that dot position. Oh, sorry, it's on the mesh. Dot x is equal to 2, like we did before when we just had 1. And then we could say -2 and do it on the 12th one. So you can see we've got control now. We want to be a bit more controlled in how we set it up. So that's why we have these 2 loops. So we're going to say the x position is going to be, that's smart. So x divided by the number, so that gives us kind of a percentage, and we want a width as well, so let's make it like 6 units. So that gives us percentage, and we're going to multiply that by our width to get a distance, and then to center things, there we go. Then it's going to simplify. And none isn't the start. Cool. So now we want to pass positions. So let's just expand the class. Let's give it an X and a Y. Oh, but we actually want to give it a pos X and a pos Y. I'm definitely going through this too quick. I hope you're keeping up. Do ask any questions. We're going to use these to set the position of our mesh. So this.mesh position. Pos Y doesn't exist. Copilot should look after that. And we have a grid. Cool. So we have a grid and we learned how we can control them, so we could move one of them around. It's a terrible number to pick, but you can see we're scooching that one over. But how can we make this more controlled? How can we have more fun with our things? So I thought we'd play with the materials and the geometries. This will show you as well how I got very caught up in the meshes, but meshes are really materials and geometries put together. Mesh is really a material and a geometry, so let's have those separate. So what we can do is I'm going to make a new file for materials, and let's just copy type this material here. So we're going to export a new class, go materials, and have a constructor, and we're going to make an array of materials. And we're going to create materials. Oh, thanks, Copilot. That's very handy. But we need a list of colors to pop in there. And if we go to coolers, there it is, you can get some cool colors. So let's just that start up. And this is a cool trick that I saw someone on Twitter sharing. I have to set in mind. So you can copy these out individually and come over and paste them in. It's a little tedious. The trick I saw was if you copy the URL, all those colors are in the URL. So if you do some nice little selections, you can very quickly get yourself an array of colors. And I'm going to actually just take the last one, this, and set it as the background color, because that will work nicely. Have a look over here, and I jump into my scene. And we're going to just swap that in there. Look. So back to our materials. So we have all these colors, we have all these materials, and we want to say this colors for each color. And we're going to do a create material. And really just the color is all we need. We'll name there, but we don't really need to worry about that because materials is going to be an array rather than an object. Cool. And we'll probably need to import 3. Copy that from here. And then we're going to and pick those off here. Finding myself so lazy with Copilot where I just type 2 letters and then they come on, Copilot, figure everything out for me. Okay, so we've got a little issue. I'm going to just get to the point with this console logs. So color is undefined. Material color. Strange. This colors for am I doing that really strangely? Don't know what I was thinking there. Okay, let's jump back. So we have these materials. Cool. So now we have a colors, materials. So we're returning materials. So let's actually just return this dot materials. I'm just returning a material. Because we're not. I'm relying too much on Copilot and trying to go too fast. So saying this dot materials dot push. And now we have an array of 4 materials that we can apply at random when we create a new thing. So instead of this material being a new standard material, we're going to pick a random one from our materials. So let's even do it like this. Let's return this, but have get random material as a function. This isn't the way I did it before. Copilot helping me out there. So that's just a little bit of maths to get a random material. So now we can say sketch materials get random material, and that will return a different color every time. This has been a lot of talking. Let's get it working. With this sketch. So sorry, this is the material that we're assigning to the mesh. We're going to get a random one. And now we have nice colors in our design. I've left that last color in. I'll just pluck that out because those ones can be hard to see. Beautiful. Cool, so now we've got random colors. Let's get some random geometries going. I almost forgot the word geometry. A lot of it's going to be the same as this. So, geometries. Cool. So, just going to be very same materials. Let's I've been looking at this too much. I can't remember how to spell anything. Create. Actually, so this is going to be a little bit different. We're not going to be able to create them as procedurally because each type of geometry is different. So this is a little bit more complicated. We're actually going to do it in the array. So Copilot's thinking ahead. So there's a box buffer. We also want to do a cone buffer, and I want a torus as well. Let's leave the cylinder in. And then torus, no. Torus geometry. Let's just go to the defaults and see what happens. Cool. So now we have random geometries. So again, back in our thing, let us use those. But instead, I'll need to add it in the app as well first. Geometries. And then I need to get that picked off. Cool. So back here, now we can say sketch dot geometries. Get random geometry. This should lead to random geometries popping up. So it's worked. Some of them are slightly the wrong size. So the cone has too wide a bottom radius. So let's make that 0.7. Cylinder's too wide. Radius top, radius bottom. Let's do 0.5. And the torus is too wide. 12.5 there. Hey, much nicer. So there we go. That's how you get yourself control over all of these things. And again, you can go in to the sketch and have a look at the things and a particular one. Let's try number 3. So what's going on with this one? In the mesh, we have material, and it is this color, but we can again change all of these things. You could go further and have them, this is something you could try out. You could have the materials change. So every second they just pick another random material. Or let's get that in place. Let's add a little animate. So I'll put that here. This sketch animator. This is my own custom thing. I've got it explained in another video. So we could say, oh, sorry, we already have one above here as well. Let's hijack that. So I think I need to add a frame counter in here. This isn't the best way of doing anything in time in ThreeJS, but again, just for speed, and I am running through this today, but hopefully you're picking it all up. So this is just going to increment a frame on every animation. So I'm going to say if the animator's frame is every second, so I'm at 60, then let's change the material on the mesh. Let's mesh that material equals, and we'll just grab another material. Whoa, that's too quick. Equals 0, equals 0. There we go. So every second they're randomly changing, and you can maybe make that a bit more interesting and say if that random is above 0.7, then make the change. So not all of them will change every time. And maybe what other fun can we have? You could do the same with the geometry. It's kind of the point of all of the changes we made. And sketch.geometries get random geometry. So now they might change color and shape. Cool. And then just for kicks, let's change the rotation speed. That didn't work at all. We are kind of rotating. Much too slowly. Maybe I don't need to be so slow. Maybe let's set it out here. Let's say anyway, I'm kind of just going wild here, but you get the point, and you can see how much control we're able to get. So hopefully that has answered your question. Do keep them coming in. There we go. I never thought I'd make something like that, so it's really cool to see all your questions coming in. Thanks again, and hopefully this made sense. Do ask any questions if I've gone too fast, but yeah, happy Sunday. Enjoy.